This is Meet the Pros, the interview show from Anyone Can Book a Gig. Coming up today, we'll be speaking with Michaela Bokova, a founding member and former manager of Kurt Rosenwinkel's label, Heartcore Records. Recently, she's taken her label experience into the DIY artist world with her company Release the Kraken, which offers direct consultancy for artists managing their own releases. We'll talk about her time at Heartcore, insight on record releases, and all the different skills artists seem to need these days. Welcome to Meet the Pros. I'm Eamon Laughlin, marketing and creative manager for Anyone Can Book a Gig. I'm joined as always by my colleague Matt De Leon, and today we have Michaela Bokova here, who got her start previously working with Kurt Rosenwinkel's label Heartcore Records before moving to start her own company, Release the Kraken, which bridges the gap between industry production and DIY musicians. So thank you so much for being here today, Michaela.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Just to get us started, we like to have people on our podcast kind of introduce themselves and talk about how they got their start in the industry.
Well, okay. So I'm a musician myself. I started as a singer. I got a classical education in, singing arias and opera. But it took not too long to move on to jazz. But I grew up and studied in Czech Republic, where jazz is a pretty small group of people being very alternative to whatever is happening there. But I was lucky to meet some of them, and they brought me into the environment of those few jazz clubs that are in Brno, where I studied music management and production at the academy. After my singing degree, I went on to study management. So it was already the connection of jazz and management started to take shape already at the uni. And already while I was entering my master's degree, I was lucky to meet Kurt Rosenwinkel in Paris, and I was just hanging in a bar. And he came there after a completely different show. It was a jazz club, but it wasn't his show. And we met at the bar and just started to chat very organically, naturally. And he told me about his new projects, and he's looking for a music manager to book him a show in Prague. And I had exactly zero experience doing that. And he told me that the gig is like in 3 weeks or so, and he needs to fill in the gap in the tour. And first thing I did was I went to my friend who is actually a booking agent, and I said, hey, I have a great gig for you. You can do this big artist and book him a gig in Prague. And she said, that's completely impossible in 3 weeks, but feel free to try, and it cost me one email. I think it was the universe working out because it's really impossible. And I tried it after that to do it again, and it didn't work out, never. So I was so lucky to book this show to Kurt in a Jazz Dog in Prague, which is a great club. And he came there and he told me about his intention of leaving his professorship at Jazz Institute Berlin and starting a record label. And he was looking for someone to basically take on, I didn't know that back then, but take on everything on the label. That means whatever you can imagine that label does. And I also didn't know what it was. Mm-hmm. So I accepted. And then I went online and I put in Wikipedia, record label. What does it do? I found out that there's some A&R and there's management and distribution. And I was, wow, it's going to be fun, right? And because of that, I moved to Berlin. So that was the reason I started living there. And that has been 10 years ago, and I'm still there. We had a blast with Kurt. And we started with his Skype band, and he was also missing a tour manager back then. So I was doing tour management. I was taking care of his administration while starting the label slowly. And I was learning and he was learning, and I can say we've learned a lot, and I still keep on learning. Mm-hmm. Because it's it's an environment that's very alive, and it's changing, especially with the development of technologies. Today we're dealing with AI, there are new tools, how to create, how to record, how to promote. So it's a job that you can never sleep on. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean,
So,
this just brings up so many points in my mind. I remember when I was in college, when I was younger, professors would say like, oh, like there's no such thing as learning experientially. Like all this stuff that you're learning in a classroom is great. It's a nice secure environment, but there's nothing like actually just being thrown into it and like figuring it out for yourself. It reminds me of
yeah.
just like, I mean, me as like a booking agent before working with this agency, I had very limited experience with booking, experience with other stuff, but with booking itself, it was limited, and I was just kind of thrown into it. And it's just like I know like going to college and doing all this stuff, doing a music management program, which I also did after my performance. It's great to learn these practical skills in a classroom, but there's literally nothing like just experiencing it in the field. And I remember hearing professors say that, and I would just be like, oh, this is like the most cliche advice that I've ever heard. So for anybody listening, definitely like listen to what Michaela is saying. There's nothing like just like figuring it out.
But to be honest, like we had a lot of theoretical base for, and my school was great. They actually pushed us to practical experience, and it was mostly about classical music though. So we were like organizing a theater piece with everybody at the school. The singers were on the stage, the orchestra was under the stage, and the theater was, and we was involving the students also on the management side. And I did PR for an opera. I managed to get an interview in a Czech TV, and it was like the first experience that was so motivating. And that all makes you really organize yourself. And for example, using sheets, Excel sheets, like that's something that I did at school. Also, they made us use editing programs for videos, basic of IT stuff, Photoshop, website programming and stuff like this. So I am using a bunch of stuff I got to learn at the Janáček's Academy of Music, but it never prepares you for the stress in a real life. Also, my school was very focused on, it's in Europe, so there's a lot of opportunities for funding. But then when I started to work with Kurt, who is American, and he's not used to funding, like governmental funding or European Union, Norwegian funds, whatever. So it was hardcore business. So we had to sell those CDs, and we had to like figure out how to stream, how to earn money there, and what else can we do to earn money. And I can tell that it wasn't quite possible till COVID hit. And we started to do those master classes where Kurt was teaching, and that was a fantastic product. But it was not just hardcore who did that. Generally, when I continued my studies up till PhD, and I wrote my dissertation, which was also published on Springer Verlag. It's an academic kind of publisher in Switzerland. And I was focusing on what the other jazz labels do to survive, because it's not very possible to just earn on streaming. Maybe those labels that are 8 years old and have Chet Baker in the catalog, they're placed in playlists and it generates something. But if you are newcomer, independent label, it's not that easy. Anyway, so every label I interviewed, they had something, either a festival or they combine their work as a booking agency and a label. They would have magazines, it's almost never just the albums. So that was interesting for me to learn. And yeah, I would advise it to every label, like find your product.
We have a lot of listenership from different parts in the world. So the US, but a lot of Latin America, and also in Europe, Asia, Australia, wherever it may be. Something interesting that you're talking about is funding. I know that that's going to resonate with a lot of people that are listening. What has your experience been like finding funding? What does that look like in Europe, for example? Because I know it is drastically different from the US.
Yeah, so we as a record label, Heartcore Records, didn't do that much. So we're quiet. We were, because I'm not involved anymore in the team, but back then we were collaborating with artists from all over the place. and we were based in Berlin. So it was not always possible to advocate the funds as a German label for example, Brazilian artists. Mm-hmm. So we were trying, but we also had Swiss artists who have a lot of fundings from cities of Zurich, for example, contributed, but it was usually the artists who applied for those fundings. Mm-hmm. And it's very often also a good argument for a label to take on a record. If the artist says, hey, I have a budget for the artwork, for marketing, and I will spread the record, then the label can say, okay, that's relieving and we like the music, so it could be a plus. Of course, ideally it should be just a fantastic music, but it can really help. Then also in Germany, there are a bunch of opportunities like Initiative Musik and Berlin Szene, but you gotta Google those in your country.
Is that how you found them, by just doing a Google search, or were you connected previously?
Yeah, but also it's good to attend conferences like Jazz Ahead, for example, where they have booths and you can talk to the people who are representing those initiatives. You can learn there, but basically Google, even chatbot can be useful, honestly. Sometimes he makes things, or she, I don't know, makes things up, but it can be useful to check it out. Or I believe that European countries are not that big, especially in specific genres. Check your friends' releases. If there are logos on it, just follow the lead. Yeah.
So when you first came to hardcore, as you said, you kind of didn't have a lot of experience in the label space. What were some of the biggest learning curves you had to overcome, and how did that help your career kind of develop to where it is now?
Yeah, I must say we're pretty naive in the beginning and thought it's gonna be much more easier. Like, it's the saying, right? Because I did it because I didn't know how hard it was. And that's what we did. But first album was actually in collaboration with Release the Records, which was a label of Avishai Cohen, the bass player. And his manager, Ray Jefford, he lives in Berlin, and he helped us with his distribution network. So we were helped by him and by his, the label has already existed for a few years, maybe 15 years. So it was kind of easy to flow in, and we shared the cost. And there was also some investment back then from Eric Clapton, who supported the label. So we had nice start. But then we wanted to release the next album, which was from Pedro Martins, the Brazilian guitarist, and Kurt really wanted to support him, and he had no name back then. He just won the competition in Montreux, and he was up and coming, And then it's more difficult to invest without the previous numbers. We knew that Kurt sells some amount of albums, and that's going to continue. The artist is growing. So then we decided we'd do it by ourselves. We'll not involve other label, and that's how we started. So I remember I was ordering my first LPs with a manufacturer in the Czech Republic, and I forgot to include barcodes. So when they arrived, I was printing them on a sticker and sticking 1,000 barcodes on the back of of the albums, And we were still distributing the way that I was going to post office, shipping myself. But then in 2020, we released a Kurt Rosenwinkel trio, Angels Around, a great album. And suddenly there was 150 orders a day, and I still was the one doing the distribution. So I think these were heavy days, and it was also the beginning of COVID. I remember I burned out, and I started to really look around for a distributor, and that's how that's how it started. And I remember we grew, meeting great people who were involved in distribution and were interested in our quite small catalog back then, because we couldn't do 30 albums a year, but maybe 5. I think in max we did 8 albums a year. I think that was the top we could really handle, and I was still alone in the label. and Kurt was touring actively. So it was pretty difficult to keep going. Yeah, so I have learned that it's impossible to do it alone as a label. And also I've learned that artists really need a lot of support, and not just the financial one, but also the one that there's someone telling you, hey, today is the day you're posting, or today is the day we are, having the single out. And we decided that because we need this time to pitch the song. And for artists, they already have many jobs. They are teachers, they are composers, they are, producers, whatever else they do, but they have to keep on earning money. And we all know that selling records is not the way today. It's a nice extra, but today releasing records is more about promoting yourself. And then, of course, you can get lucky and you can get playlisted, you can get nice streaming, but you cannot rely on it. So if they should be also their own label, it's a pretty challenging extra to take on. Yeah, and that's maybe the bridge that takes me to why I started Release the Kraken, because, of course, the answer is get a label, right? If you cannot handle it by yourself, you get a label. But how many jazz labels are there, actually? Not so many. And if there are they really, what about their capacity? It's not so different from hardcore. Like, there are usually few people in the team, one or two. In those older labels, maybe there's bigger team, but also they're releasing, they're packed, and they're getting 100 submissions a day. And hardcore was also getting many submissions, and I saw them, and I was so swamped, because then you don't even see like those accounting responsibilities and tax and bureaucracy in Germany is just mind blowing. And then you're answering like, sorry, we're really full. Many times, and I'm apologizing here officially to all artists I didn't respond to. It was totally impossible. Sometimes I even listened to it and we loved it, and we just couldn't, And then I was talking to many friends who maybe found a label, but the label said, hey, we will do the job, but you'll pay us. So, and you will buy your own CDs for the wholesale price. So suddenly the artist had to deliver the finished master, which means paying for the studio, paying for the masters and mixes, and then paying the label, and maybe giving up the master rights. Okay, so I was like, how about there's a service that is not a record label, but it's just helping the independent artists, and then they can pay for the service, it's affordable, but they're not alone. And I simply love talking to artists and figuring out like how it's going to be presented, and what are we going to do for social media, and when we're going to do the singles and pitching. It's all important campaign kind of package we're creating for artists. And we get just our time covered, and then we're not signing as a label, we helped you and it's all yours. And I don't think it looks bad if you're self-released. I think it's admirable. And though there are many reasons why it's useful to have a label, I'm not saying don't have a label. There are many labels who provide a community that is very valuable. Maybe they initiate collaboration within the community. That's also amazing. Maybe they have the money and they actually pay for something. That's perfect. Or maybe they have a nice relationship with festivals, PRists, maybe they know journalists. Like, there's so much you can still get from a label. But as I said, it's so hard to get there to any label.
Right, and a successful self-release is probably a really good thing to have on your resume if your goal is eventually to work with the label. I mean, even just the understanding of what it takes is going to help you negotiate a deal with a label better, because you understand what's needed and you can speak the same language.
That's right. Like, especially the debut, like if somebody is a first newcomer, and it's very rare that label takes you just if you have like not much going on social media, nobody knows you haven't played really nowhere. that doesn't mean you're not a fantastic artist. But it's really cool to have this first record to show. And the record is not just to be streamed, but it's also to be talked about. So, and I think that the good advice about releasing a record is to expand the campaign as much as you can. So like come up with those singles, pre-release 3 of them, or release all of them as a single and then announce the record. I mean, you can do that. And I think what's important and very useful is still creating events. So you still have something to talk about with your friends, your social media followers, but also the journalists. And every single can have a press release and be like, hey, look, I'm coming and my record is out on that and that day. And journalists are, getting events, and you created an event that can have featuring video on Instagram, posting pictures, sharing the process. Yeah, I think that's what matters, really.
I like the word that you used a few moments ago, which is capacity. I mean, which leads me into the next comment. The business model that you're describing for yourself is very interesting. I think a question that I get a lot is like, oh, I need a manager, I need an agent. But these agent and manager and label industry relationships formally can be very, they require upkeep from both sides, right? So to be able to hire somebody like yourself on kind of a project consultancy basis to get everything that needs to be done, and then expand upon that seems more logical to me in 2026 than becoming in a relationship with somebody on a formal basis where you don't necessarily know what's going to happen next month. So I think to point this out to the listeners and to just compliment what you're doing is that this business model is really interesting. Being able to know what needs to get done and do what you need to do with Michaela or whomever to get it done, and then see what happens after is just a really interesting thing. And I think a lot of the people that we work with at first are in a mindset that they need a team. They need an artist team that's permanent, that's fixed. However, I'm just going to in a friendly way, challenge that mindset to the people that are listening to realize that there are things that need to get done, but that doesn't necessarily mean you need to have a permanent team.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Actually, in 2020, Heartcore was joined by my now husband, Vojta Drnek, and we together grew within the company. Also, we came with a songbook of Kurt's, and he was editing the charts, but he also is self-taught graphic designer. And so together we create a team that not only distributes digitally and makes social media content, but also graphic design for CDs and LPs. Because based on the statistics, we know that in a jazz, physical records still hold value. And it's also somehow emotionally more real when you can hold it. Yeah. Also, you can sell still on tour. I know if you meet random person on the street and tell them you're buying CDs, they'll think you're crazy. But we're in the niche, and if it works there, then it works there. So I would still encourage people to, if there is a budget, to manufacture physical records. Yeah, and that's basically what the label provides. So we took those essential things that the label provides and offered it as, we have a kind of a la carte choices. They can mix up their own offer. So we're not doing bundles because we know that many artists are very capable in video editing. So we're not pushing them to video edit for them. Some of them are graphic designers, so they don't need us to do graphic design. And that's also the advantage, because sometimes when you're with a label, they maybe get paid for a job that you like doing and you want to do yourself. You know, with us, you can really handpick the activities you don't want to do. Mm-hmm. And we like doing them all, so we're fine with whatever package.
So call Michaela.
Call me. Call. Actually, the things that I don't like doing, my husband is doing. Yeah, it's also based on my experience and my friends' stories, they just release, very often they just release, and then they never get back to ask for any accounting or like how the record's doing. And then the label is like, oh, I don't even know where the numbers are, like but I must say it's a big thing to create a system where you have overview of all the streams and all the channels of sales. That was another big lesson for me, that we were really at Heartcore, we wanted to conquer the world. So we're like, let's distribute there and there and there. And then we were getting 10 different sets of data to report to the artists. That's where like really Vojta had to create an insane Excel sheet where they would, based on the functions, kind of translate to a readable statement like, hey, this is how much you earned. And it is important because sometimes the records just simply get successful, and especially with responsible pitching. There was a case where we didn't really expect that, but there was one standard record with standards, and it was placed in the Apple playlist Jazz Chill, and it was there for 3 years, and it got, I don't know, 2 to 3 million streams. And suddenly I saw it in the report, and I thought it was a glitch. You don't really see that often, like in the jazz. On the jazz record, and it was a debut, so it wasn't even an artist that would be like releasing very often. And that really pumped me. I was like, okay, so it is possible, if you really pitch. And what's really important for that though is to have a good distributor. So I think if you're on a label, you can also wonder who their distributor is. Not every distributor has the same relationships with the streaming platforms, for example. So
Yeah, I think those playlists can be incredibly powerful. Could you talk a little bit about how you go about getting a track or music onto those playlists? I know that there's a certain sort of set of lead time before a release when you need to do that work, but how's your experience been working with streaming services?
Yeah, I suggest to upload the music to the system at least 1 month before, even 5 weeks. And if your distributor is able to pitch to Apple Music, they like having it like very early. So like 4 weeks in advance is an ideal situation. And that means that you already have to have the UPC code of the track. Without that, you cannot really assign it to the playlist form. For Spotify, you can do it yourself as an artist. To Apple, you cannot really. In Apple, distributor has to be there to access this form. Sorry. And on Spotify, you can do it yourself via Spotify for Artists. And you can do it anytime before the release, but don't do it a day before the release. Don't do it even a week. Take at least 2 weeks. We do it a month before also. Simply because if it gets to an editor, they have more time to check it out. Even though maybe those, if you're new on Spotify, it probably is going to be algorithmic too. And but what it does, if you pitch on Spotify, it can show you in the music radar, and that can get you some streams from your previous followers if you're not new on Spotify. So at least you are still approaching the people who already heard you on Spotify before. So you don't want to miss that opportunity. So at least that. Yeah. And then there's Deezer pitching. There's also a form, Deezer for creators. You can sign up there. Yeah, that's what we do, those 3 platforms. Yeah. It's like PR kind of stuff. You never know if you'll hear back. You never know if you get a review. You never know if you get playlisted. But if you do it repeatedly, and you also pimp up your profiles, you really are updating your bio accordingly. You have a nice picture. The algorithm can see it and they can reward you for that. So if you don't have a picture on Spotify, if you don't have a bio on Spotify, you don't have your social media linked, naturally, Spotify doesn't consider your profile as a nice thing to show their clients, their listeners. So you gotta think like Spotify. I mean, what's their goal? Their goal is to show nice pictures to people and make it look attractive and taken care of, So that's the first thing you should do, is to access your profiles. That's also what we do. Actually, we optimize people's profiles because we know that the algorithm can reward that in the future. Of course, not right away, but I think it's worth it to just start and then keep going and believe that one song somewhere will maybe hit the playlist. Yeah.
In your work with artists, are there consistent things that you see overlooked? For example, making sure that those photos in that bio are updated consistently. Are there certain things that you find often get missed that you advise to people over and over again?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, there are more and more opportunities because those streaming services really want to motivate the artists to be there. For example, making canvas. I read a study that it really helps the streaming when people can see the moving thing on their phones. So some artists just don't do those. Also, the profiles are usually not filled with information, but also there is a typical problem that I can see all the time, and that is that one artist has 4 different profiles because they work with different labels and distributors, and they created a new profile for them, not linking the first one. Or they have a band called, I don't know, Joe, whatever, trio. And then Joe Doe trio. And then it creates the profile for that band. And then he releases another under John Doe, new profile. And then he does quartet, and that's another profile. And what it means is that this Joe is spreading his efforts to 3 different profiles. And I have a good advice. It is possible on Spotify to make them one if you talk to Spotify support. So you just go to chat with them. It's very accessible. And usually they can do it within a few minutes. They can just, okay, ahead, it's you. You just have to prove it's you. You want to fuse those profiles, and it's possible. And they transfer those followers, and they're going all to the same profile. Yeah. So that's a very typical mistake I would name here. Yeah.
Just a question, are you involved in the actual production process at all, or do you only work with already finished albums and you help with distribution and streaming and marketing, etc.?
Do you mean going to a studio or?
Yeah, I don't know if with what you do now, I know when you're working with Heartcore, I mean, it might have been a little bit different, but I'm just curious about that.
Yeah, we usually take on finished masters, and also we like if visual material is accessible from the artists, but sometimes artists reach out to us before and we advise them what would be cool to have, maybe just put the phone in the studio, make sure you have some photos so they have a list of things to bring to us. But sometimes there are people who don't have any material, and then we also can create visuals from some stock footage from libraries and try to bring the visuals to the record, which is super important. What I also think is a little bit of a struggle for artists is consistency in branding. So what we take care of and really think is important is to stick with the branding. So if we're responsible for the artwork, or if we're not, we'll connect with the person who is, and we're taking the fonts from them and we're using them on all the social media material. We're using them on all the banners. We want the pictures to look, they belong to the campaign. So, the visual content repeats, and the followers can say, oh, okay, that's this record and that's this artist, and I know it already, and I will click now. When I saw it for the 4th time, I'll finally click. It's kind of how its marketing works.
Yeah, that's something that I talk about with artists every time we give a workshop, and I talk about marketing is sometimes, as weird as it sounds, you are building a brand, and you need recognition in the same way that a brand has colors that you associate with it or certain fonts and stuff.
Yeah.
And it is important, but not every musician has the same visual mind, and so sometimes you do need people with those skills as well.
Yeah, and sometimes it's really, I understand. I mean, it's a different kind of job, you know. And then sometimes I'm so sad when I see like some Instagram fonts used on this beautiful artwork they have, and I'm like, why would you do this? Why would you do that? But it's obvious. I mean, there's not so much. Now I will use the same word, capacity, in those people's head who take care of, you know, other aspects of the music. And I think teaming up is really a great thing. That can just a reminder, hey, you have this beautiful product here, use it, you know.
So if an artist has a certain budget for a release, just to give you a hypothetical here, where do you think the most impact could be made from allocating that budget between maybe they're running digital ads, maybe they're going to spend some money to get good graphic design? Where do you think the budget, kind of, how do you mentally split it up when you look at a release like that?
I think, except producing the record, make a photo shoot, pay photographer. Because pictures, you know, were the generation of Instagram. So pictures really count, and the people react to it, and they see there's something new is happening when new pictures coming, and your face is what matters really after the music. And yeah, I think it's worth it to try. If you post on social media and you see the post is successful, I would invest some money in boosting this one. So first wait for the organic and then boost it. So I would also do some.
You see success with that?
Yeah, it's like a general rule. So don't pay for the post that you want to help to because it's unsuccessful. Try to invest to a post when it's successful. It's like, you know that you have a product that sells well, then you want to market it more because you know it's probably going to be liked by more. So maybe some paid ads could be a good investment, but it also depends on the situation. I think it's good to invest to video. And I think the best idea is to invest to video from a live show, even though for releasing an album, it's really great to have something that includes the master because you are promoting the very music. So I'm up for that. But I also think if you have a limited budget, do a live show of that record because it's going to be very useful for your booking also. So you're promoting the record and your band.
And you can always take clips of a longer live video and put the mastered version over it on social media and stuff too.
Yeah, if like just play it on Click or something. No, I don't know. Yeah, you can definitely use the visuals of it and use the master. Artwork, yes, sure. But it depends. Maybe you have a friend who you relate to artistically, and it doesn't have to be like 10 grand, for an artwork. It really depends. So it's definitely good to invest, but it's not always necessary to invest too much money for a very good artwork, I'd say. Yeah. Don't do it in Canva for a printer. but use Canva definitely for, if you're doing it yourself, use Canva for social media. It's a super helpful tool. But if you're going to make CDs, I think definitely pay for a graphic designer to make the layout and communicate with the printer, because there's a whole alchemy around how it, the colors, how they come out, it really matters. And it's a big knowledge of the graphic designer. And that can save you a lot of struggle and back and forth with the manufacturer who is already pissed because somebody who doesn't understand graphic design is submitting printable material. So I think invest to graphic designer if you're making a physical record. Yeah.
Well, I think the biggest takeaway for this is that there is a DIY path, and I think we all know that it's much easier for people to self-produce and self-publish these days. But it almost like it seems like you're offering a middle point between working with a label and just doing everything yourself without any oversight. And I find that encouraging for the future of independent music.
Thank you. Yeah, getting those emails that I couldn't respond to, I found a solution within me. So there was one motivation that made me start this company. And the second is that we're focusing on doing it right within the streaming services. Even though we're not so happy with the policy, I personally really don't want jazz music not to be there. Because if we like it or not, this is how the music is being consumed right now. And I really want the music to be there for the future generations, basically. And I know it's a very complicated discussion on whether the music should be there or not for various reasons, like the economical reasons, the political reasons, everything. But yeah, I think it is important for the genre to be present. But there are, of course, other services you can use to actually get your money back, as Bandcamp, for example. I really recommend to everyone to use Bandcamp. I know it's been also purchased by a bigger company. It's not so independent anymore, but the functions are the same. There are Bandcamp Fridays where they waive the fee. Also, Bandcamp Fridays are a great opportunity to post. Remind your fans, hey, if you buy my music today, all the money goes to me. So just keep track. Maybe it would be nice to have a calendar of such events and looking for reasons to tell your friends, hey, my music is here for you, And maybe even before you release, you can share the process. Hey, I'm practicing. This part's very difficult, So suddenly, social media, streaming services, but then also those alternative channels of communicating with your fans are super important. Yeah. Family, friends. This is your first client, always. and then it snowballs. Yeah.
Yeah, and I always recommend artists don't just use social media. Have an email list. If you can, have some sort of other community feature so that you have your own contacts and you're not just relying on that. Yeah. It's a similar thing to having a Bandcamp in addition to streaming to bring people who truly feel a connection to your music to support you more directly. I know that there are tools like Patreon and similar things as well will support the artist directly. And I think as things continue in the way they're going, that's going to be more important than ever for artists to be able to support themselves and continue to share their art.
Right. Or crowdfunding is also a great opportunity to talk about your record a lot before it even sees the light of the world. You can ask for help or pre-orders. It's another great event to announce on your social media. Actually, Release the Kraken also helps to set up the crowdfunding campaign, because that's another thing that is very time consuming. And you have to create those tiers and make those little texts for everything and graphic design for the promotion of the campaign. So, yeah, there's so much that can be done. But I already feel the heavy load on my chest just to hear, okay, I also need to have a newsletter, and when I'm gonna do it, it's a lot, and that's just releasing a record. That it's not even bringing money to you directly. But it's a tough path. I want to acknowledge everybody who's ever been through it, and if one more advice I have is that if you're considering to go independent for your first record, do it because you're learning the services you're going to outsource in the future. And it's really good to know what they include, because you know what you're paying for. You're realizing suddenly the time you're saving with the money you're paying. Whether it's direct payment or is a percentage that they're taking away from you, it's money well spent. yeah, the fee for the distributor is, if it's a good deal, is money well spent. If you have a good label and you have a 50-50 and they do a lot of work for you, it's money well spent. And you will see it when you try it by yourself.
Thank you so much for meeting with us today, Michaela.
Yeah, thanks so much too. And yeah, everybody who is watching this, just be strong. And what matters is really get the music out. I mean, I'm sure there's so much great music in the drawers. And, you know, the typical strategies of streaming services is like release. And those who are earning money there are releasing so much music that it's not good. So I acknowledge that the music you have in your drawer, at least some of it, must be better, and just release it as a single, you know, like just go show your heart. And I want to just encourage everybody who's doubting, and go for it. Now is the time. It's so easy to upload it to the ether.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a really positive way to wrap it up. So, you know, encouragement, and it is possible. And I think that you're showing that as well.
Hopefully, fingers crossed.